Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining Ranger 4's webcast, DevOps and Value Stream Mapping. Here to facilitate the discussion this afternoon is Helen Beale and Daniel Breston. As mentioned earlier, please write any questions you may have in the chat box or use the question function in your GoToWebinar control panel, and they'll be answered at the end. I will now pass it over to Helen and Daniel.
Hello, everyone. Hello, Helen.
Hello.
Thank you for joining. I'm the Chief of DevOps. My name is Daniel Breston, and I help people transform and benefit from the values and cultures of DevOps. And Helen?
Yep, good afternoon, good morning, everyone. I am a DevOpsologist, also working in the DevOps department here at Ranger 4.
Today we're going to be looking at DevOps and the value stream mapping to help drive better, faster, safer in collaboration and communication across your business. So, Helen, could you tell me more about ideation to realization, please, and why that's important to an organization and to DevOps?
I certainly can. So ideation to realization, as described here, is our representation of the SDLC, or the software development life cycle. The important point is that kind of DevOps nirvana is the ability to do ideation to realization. And what I mean by that is the ability to trace a feature or an idea from its conception all the way through its life cycle. So all the time that it takes to build out the requirements, design it, actually code it or compile it or integrate it, test it, and get the thing into production. Once it's in production, we want to be able to see what impact that feature has had on business value. So that's the realization part of it. And we also call this IVA, so you'll see there's 5 steps that we've identified in the SDLC. So we start with ideation, I've described, and then we talk about integration, because most organizations are doing a lot less coding now than they used to, and a lot more kind of composing applications out of binaries and open source files that they download and put in repositories like Artifactory and Nexus. The validation bit is really the quality control and testing bit, and operation is getting that thing into production. So what we're trying to do when we help people do DevOps is ultimately get to a place where they are doing ideation in the sense that they can identify how much a thing costs to do and how much value it's bringing to them in the most frictionless and speediest or rapid way, but still remaining safe.
Yeah, and what I think we find, and thank you for that, Helen, is that that stream along the way has a lot of obstacles. Some of them we do or put into place because of our over-engineering of processes in the technology department. Some of it is from our customers who keep changing things, or from our business who keeps changing focus and priorities. Whatever that is, the stream gets blocked up, and because of that, you don't get to go from idea to something that the customer wants, or something that IT needs as far as a fix or a new upgrade, better, faster, safer. So Henry Ford, I love this quote. My first CIO gave it to me 2,000 or 3,000 years ago when I first started in IT. And obstacles are those frightful things you see when you take your eyes off your goal. And reportedly, what then happened is Henry Ford looked at everybody, and my CIO was very good at doing this. He would go, and who asked you to take your eyes off the goal? So most people in an organization, end to end, can't describe the whole idea to realization lifecycle and what their part in it is to each one of those steps of ideation to realization. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to come up with a way of helping people do that by looking strategically at the stream of value of work before they start addressing it tactically at the process level, which is where most people start. And without that coordination top-down and that buy-in top-down, they can't get to where they want to be. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, this is a kind of core tool for us that we're using to help people transform transform their DevOps environment, get to DevOps environment. I think this is really important as well. We get asked this such a lot with the differences between VSM and process mapping. And as you've described, VSM is really high level. It probably involves multiple processes, and probably we're looking at the interaction between those processes. And actually, we use these quite frequently in tandem as they were designed to do. So what we often find is that we look at the VSM and then we start to identify the processes within that VSM that are causing bottlenecks, and then we do a deeper dive into that particular process. And both of the exercises have the same kind of outcome and the same driver and the same kind of methodology. They're both visualization exercises. They both try and help us do stuff faster. They both identify bottlenecks and enable us to find improvement opportunities and drive us towards developing an improvement plan that clearly articulates work that can be done to move forward.
And I found, Helen, that it really helps people drive out that what do you want to change, and also to get them to focus on what is the why. And I know you like the why and the change part, so I'm just wondering if you could spend a minute or so explaining that, or a couple minutes explaining that, please, why it's so important and what you feel it is.
Yeah, and I see that too. It's a massively useful change tool. It really, there are many kind of light bulb moments that happen in it, and I know we're going to go through one of our case stories in a minute. The kind of change that people want to make, I've already alluded to it. We've probably between us already used the word 3 or 4 times, and it's really about doing stuff faster. I think as humans evolve systems, we tend to sometimes overcomplicate them. We put checks and balances in. They become more complicated and sophisticated over time, and it's good to take a step back, or I like it when you describe this as a kind of 30,000, 60,000 foot view, where take a step back and really try and understand end to end what's happening. So the change that people are trying to make is really about delivering value to the customer faster and making that whole process more friction-free is my new favourite word this week. So the why part is quite important. So this is the why, not the how. And then this, again, is a really good way to explain the difference between a VSM and a process map. So a VSM is all about a why, and the process map is all about the detail of the how. And they're kind of 2 different groups of people. And in a traditional kind of command and control hierarchical infrastructure, it tends to be sort of senior management that are concerned with the why, and that can question at a high level why certain things are happening in a certain way and why it would make strategic sense to change that. Whereas the process level, we're actually looking at the intricacies of how something is operating. Does that make sense? I know you have some opinions on the why and the how as well.
Well, I think, as people start to look at what are they doing today, or what we call the current stream map, they immediately start to think about how they do it and how they can improve it. And they don't ask the question, well, why do we want to do that? Or why are we working this way? And the value stream map being exercised with a strong facilitator keeps getting them to go back to, if you don't understand why you're doing something, how in the heck can you go and figure out what do you want to do? And if you don't know what you're doing and why you're doing it, then there's no reason to start thinking about the how. And I think that whole life cycle, beginning with the why, going to the what, and going to the how, is very important. And the way that you describe change and that whole ideation to realization view, and understanding the parts of that and why you're involved and what you're doing, is what we're trying to get to in the current stream map. And I know this thing has a lot of fancy figures and stuff like that on it, but in reality, it's just a bunch of Post-it notes. But you cheat. And the first thing you do is you put it up with no more than 5 flip charts, or what I use, magic paper, on here. And you give them no more than 10 to 15, which is the middle blue layer, steps, and you go right. From the time that some bright spark has an idea until that idea goes live, explain the process. And explain it in such a way that you understand the chunks, and explain it in such a way that you don't go outside the lines and you don't use more than 10 to 15 Post-it notes. And then along the way, we go and we map what are the issues that they find for each one of those steps, or the things that they would really like to solve within each step, and what's the technology that they use along the way, and who are they delivering it to. And when they sit back and they look at that, that's their first aha moment. And I know when we did this together at a client, I think both of us were surprised at the aha moment.
There was a pretty silent room full of quite shocked looking faces actually once they brought all this out. And you know, they kept on emphasizing to us in this particular episode that that group of people had never really been in a room together before, so they all had a little touch point or a few touch points into this whole stream, but to build the whole thing up was they were really quite shocked, I think, at the extent of effort that was going into something that they actually all thought was a relatively simple and straightforward activity.
And I think thank you for bringing that up, because all of the people in the room were managers. All of the people in the room were senior enough in the management structure and for their particular aspect that they were defining to control it or agree how to change it. And that's really important in a value stream mapping exercise. You have to have the right people in there. They need to be focused on the what. And you don't want to have people in there that are doing the everyday work. You want people that are quite strategic in the way that work should flow, no matter what that is, whether it's a new product that you're doing or a technical upgrade. And this is what they found. We didn't create this. They created this. They created the fact that they had all kinds of meetings going on that involved 55 people, or they needed 268 people for an insignificant process, or 25% of the whole company for an insignificant process, and that the actual work time for this insignificant process, from the time they started to the time it finished, was actually around 72 weeks, of which only 191 were productive to them. Only 191 were things that they actually were doing something for that time. And that was their second aha moment, when they started stream mapping exercise works best when it's back-to-back days worth of management time. You are trying to change the way that you work, so devote that time to it to go better, faster, safer. And to help show that testing was a big part of their overall issue. So the test solution process was going to be their next value stream mapping exercise, which they've now done. And they also realized that their approval process and their design process and the way that they provision environments also needed to change. So there were further value stream and process mapping exercises that we helped them with to create better, faster, safer. But the visualization of this told the story a lot better than any type of discovery process that we could do, because it was all their information. There was nothing that we did other than guide them and facilitate them. And then there was this value stream charter. And Helen, what did you think of this charter when we pulled it out?
So it's interesting, isn't it? Because the market has kind of different viewpoints on when this charter should be done, and sometimes we do it before we start, and sometimes we do it through the first part, so the kind of current state mapping versus the future state mapping that we'll look at in a minute. But it is, I think, the reason I lean like you towards doing it in those first couple of days is when you get them to physically sign it, the commitment is made. And the biggest challenge to any change program is around people's commitment and keeping that momentum going. And people, you know, it's a huge feat to get that number of senior managers in a room for 4 days anyway, and we do it in 2 sets of 2 days typically, and we do it double-handed, so 2 consultants, because it is really intense. There can be quite politically charged situations, and it's very, very hard work for the facilitators. I think Daniel already kind of alluded to the fact that you're kind of constantly having to keep the focus on why and keep them from diving down and going into the how. So, you know, there is again a bit of an aha moment when everyone signs up to their charter and this bit of paper, and you know, it gets committed to probably being on a wall somewhere, so everyone can remind themselves what they agreed to do that day, and that they must follow through on the change effort that they agreed to do.
I think this is a great visualization of commitment, because if you print this at A1 or A0, and it shows not only the executive sponsor and whoever the lucky person in the organization is that's supposed to lead this change, but actually shows all the signatures of all the parties that were involved and that they've all committed to some metrics which are on here, some criteria which are on here, some assumptions that are on here of what's supposed to drive that change. That really does start to lay the foundation for that change, because now you not only have buy-in, you've got, I signed up to it, my blood is on here, buy-in. And that helps you get to that next step, that future state. And that future state, you don't have to design with fancy physio diagrams or all the other stuff. You can just make it look, well, something relevant to them. And this to them was relevant. They wanted to highlight some of the major things that they were going to do and obstacles that they had. They wanted to concentrate on the three primary metrics that come out, which is reduce the time end to end of a chunk of steps that go from idea to realization, and the amount of time that you work from idea to realization, and really improve that accuracy by the time it's done. So as you can see on here, before, their percent complete in accuracy across the whole board was less than 32%. They had a goal of within 180 days of getting it up to 95%. Before they started, they were at 364 days. By the time they finished, they wanted to get to 87 days. So it was a very aggressive program of change, and everybody was going to end up owning some part of it to help make it happen. And in case you didn't hear us, it was 364 days reduced to 87 days. This was their target, and they felt that they could actually blow through that target. And their senior manager that came in every day at the end of it to motivate them also said, and I believe that you can blow through this target. And that got them into the improvement plan. Helen, could you explain this part, please?
Yeah, I mean, this is you've probably caught up the people on the call that there's kind of three component documents or deliverables as part of a value stream mapping exercise. So the first or the second, depending on where we do it in the process, is the charter, and the other is the current state, and this is the final piece, which is the improvement plan or transformation plan, depending on what kind of terminology people prefer to use. We have some organisations who've been through transformations before, and transformation sometimes becomes a bit of a dirty word if transformations has often meant reorganisations and redundancies. So, you know, there's some sensitivity to the correct amount of wording, but the importance of this is everybody in that room that signed the charter now gets actions, and we identify in the room to not overload anybody with too many actions. So if it seems like somebody's getting too much work, as part of the collaboration exercises, we reassign that and identify other people that can do it. So everybody has a commitment in it, and you'll see on the right-hand side of that improvement plan there, you'll see some arrows, and that's where we start defining how long these pieces of work are going to take and when they're going to start and when they're going to finish. So again, we've visualized a work stream that is going to make the change that they have identified that they can make.
And we get everyone to sign this as well. And we stress, and they begin to realize, because of the amount of effort and work that is going into it, that you're not accountable for making that particular thing happen in detail. You are accountable for asking others to help you make that part of the transformation plan occur. And that continues that collaboration and communication, which is so important to an organization as they're starting to transform themselves or start to benefit from the powers of DevOps. So that transformation plan helps them see where they are today. It helps them articulate what's getting ready to happen. It helps them visualize how they're going to coach their teams and what type of communication plan they have. It helps them do this in an iterative improvement cycle. So for those people out there who are agile and are used to sprints, the Post-it note document that you saw at the beginning, at the end of 2 weeks, because they've now made a change, the Post-it note document now changes. They now have a new current state. And as they continue to modify that current state with Post-it notes, everyone in the organization can see that, and everyone in the organization can see that iterative improvement and start to see how they're becoming part of this. And that leads us to the very last thing, which is celebrate success. And I think, Helen, you're a firm believer of making sure that you celebrate not just success, but also the effort.
Yeah, it's a massive part of the DevOps kind of the best practice and principles. So yes, we must broadcast and socialize and share good news and good stories. And that helps keep the momentum going. It helps people trust in the process, and it helps the momentum. As I said, helps that keep going.
And I think we were asked a number of times about, well, but we're computer people, we're technologists, we're going to go and put this into a Visio map, or we're going to go put this into iGraphics or some other tool so that we can make it happen. And we asked them at the beginning, could they just keep it simple and keep it with Post-it notes? And when they did that, they actually decided that that was more powerful, to actually see the Post-it notes move around and to have people change the Post-it note, physically touch the Post-it note and change it, was another way of transforming and getting people involved so that you could do this better, faster, safer. And I know Helen is a big, fan of visualization, and this is kind of a blown up view of what they ended up with. They did this on their own, but you can see the surprise here.
Yeah, and it's great what they did, because they did kind of like almost like an open day, didn't they? So they had a room and they put this on the wall and they invited everybody to drop in. It was like a drop-in centre and have a look. And this was between the two sessions, so the 4 days of effort. We do 2 days to do the current state, and then normally have a little break, and then 2 days to do the future state. So between the current and future state exercises, they had these drop-ins and almost like a kind of clinic. And again, this was to do with not wanting to scare people, because they wanted to change, they wanted to improve, they wanted to do things faster and friction-free, but they didn't want people to think that meant they were getting rid of people. It was about speed. It wasn't about necessarily cost and taking people out of the business. And it was very well received.
It really allowed them, I think, to be the plan, and they kept that up, and they kept the visualization up, and so the whole organization could be the plan, because there were managers from across the entire organization, the customer requirements in all the way to the service desk side, that were involved in creating the new way forward. And celebrate success. I think they even after this session, they went out and had drinks and pizza. So they're continuing the let's go out and celebrate success with everybody as they end all of their iterative sprints toward their now common goal. So Helen, if you could itemize for us the main success factors of a value stream mapping exercise, the type of people we have, the organization interactions, and the use of automation to help drive the change, that would be helpful, please.
Well, I love the fact that we've got celebrate here again. I think we've had celebrate for 3 or 4 slides in a row almost now, and it is a cornerstone of it. And the thing is, when we say celebrate, there's so many things happening there. It's recognizing people's contribution and making them feel good about that. It's showing best practice for the rest of the team and giving them an opportunity to learn from it and take from it and do more with it. It helps drive momentum because everybody's feeling good about it. it is about communication as well. I mean, most of the time we don't tell each other when we've done something really good or when we've won something or something has been great, and we should get better at that because it will help other people to be inspired to do more as well. But yeah, the VSM requires people that have the authority to make strategic decisions. It requires them to have their time committed. So it requires probably their bosses to say, yes, we think it's worth you spending 4 days out of the business. 4 days kind of doesn't sound very much when you say 4 days, but when you think of it as a percentage of the 200 and whatever days that we typically work, each of us a year, it starts being a bigger proportion. So you really want to make sure that value is delivered from spending that much time on something like this. So yeah, Daniel mentioned that a senior manager popped in every day of the exercise, and that's an initiative that we ask for every time that person comes in, reviews what's happened, again, gives positive feedback. These sessions have moments where they get quite fraught. People can get quite defensive. You can see kind of where there might be splits or barriers between particular working groups. And it's great at the end of it because people have worked through that and they have collaborated and they are feeling closer and they are feeling that they can work together because they've written a whole plan of how they're going to deliver a project together. But yeah, it's intense, it's hard work. It has some great results. Typically, we see somewhere between 60 and 80% reductions in a value stream elapsed time. It's quite remarkable what can be done. And as I said earlier, these value streams have just kind of evolved often without any attention. So they've become kind of a bit of like beasts of their own making. Actually, standing back and having a close look at them, we can pretty much always see that there are ways to take very, very significant amounts of time out of the process and deliver that innovation to the customer much, much faster.
Thank you for that. And I'd just like to say that these are the books that I tend to look at when I wanted, as I learned this over the last decade or so about value stream mapping. So these are my high-level mentors and coaches for this.
And you met Joanne recently, didn't you, at DevOps Days?
I met Jez, met Joanne.
Yeah.
Mike Orson has helped me for many years. So that just leaves Karen Martin one day. And
so we have about 3 minutes for questions.
Yep.
So we don't have
anyone
any
has a question, I can see. Yeah, there's no questions there at the moment. So if you have any questions, quickly ask them now. We both need to drop off. I'm dead on past today, as we have some other things to do. Priyanka will send out recording of the webcast.
Yep, I will.
And we'll catch up with all of you soon.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Helen, Daniel.
Okay, bye, everybody. If you have questions, let us know.
Bye.
Bye.